Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, Ari and Big Mike are proud to present the greatest podcast in the world. No snowflakes allowed, and summer is coming.
This is the podcast that was started by two guys on cigar night. So, Mike, what do you got for us?
Well, I'd actually hoping that you'd introduce us to this article we were reading about. So why don't we go through it point by point and, let's...
All right. Before I mention the article, I'll tell you a little story. I was at a 5K race that my son was running at over Thanksgiving weekend. It was in Charlotte, North Carolina. And the place was just mobbed. And I wear this yarmulke everywhere I go. And some guy comes up to me as we're going, and he puts his hand on my shoulder and looks me in the face. I think he shook my hand, too. And he says, I just want you to know we're all thinking about you. Guarantee that guy was a Christian. And just this Tuesday, Dennis Prager had an article, and the article is entitled, American Jews Who Worked for a Secular America Made a Fatal Error. And
I wonder what that fatal error could be.
The fatal error is working for a secular America. So since World War II, most American Jews have believed that the more secular American society is, the more secure their status. This has been, as I have argued all my life, a colossal error. Indeed, it may turn out to be a fatal error, God forbid. With the outburst of unprecedented levels of anti-Semitism, American Jews are living the famous warning, beware what you wish for, you just might get it. And with the huge numbers of people who are taking the side of an army of barbarians that went into a civilized country and attacked civilians, and they're taking the side of the barbarians, and you have to wonder, is Dennis Prager right here?
I do think that one of the things that religion brings to mankind, whether you agree with religion or not, is there's a concept of morality that isn't just a man-based thing, that apparently it comes from God. That God says we're supposed to act X, Y, and Z. And when we take that out of it, if man chooses what right and wrong is, well, you're a man and I'm a man, so if you choose that this is your right and wrong, who's to say that I agree with that? So now, if it's man-based, I can argue it. If it's God-based, how can I? Because who am I? I'm not greater than God. So by taking God out of everything, I've now put in the ability to argue what is morality.
People could argue the merits of a religious society versus a non-religious society until they're blue in the face, and pretty much they have over the last couple centuries. But I mean, when you see the difference between, say, the Middle Ages, where it was a very violent society, and the 20th century, which was a far more violent society, then you get to see the merits of faith, for Judeo-Christian monotheism, ethical monotheism, if you want. For example, people talk a lot about the Spanish Inquisition, and there's nothing good about the Spanish Inquisition, but they talk about it like it was the Holocaust before it was even the Holocaust. And as I said, there's nothing good about the Spanish Inquisition, but it wasn't that. For example, the courts of the Spanish Inquisition, as compared to other medieval, like crown courts of the time, like King Ferdinand's own courts that had nothing to do with the Inquisition, or, for example, or for that matter, King Henry VIII's courts. All courts used torture at that time, every single one of them. There was not a court in Europe that didn't. So the fact that the courts of the Spanish Inquisition used torture is awful, it's terrible, but it doesn't distinguish them from other courts at the time. And the fact is that when the Spanish Inquisition would apply torture, which again is nothing good about it and is complete evil, they had rules. They were only allowed to continue for 15 minutes. They were only allowed to do it once. And admittedly, they broke those rules all the time. But if the devil came to you, and says somebody you care about is, God forbid, going to be put into a torture chamber, you have one choice. The torturers have rules, or the torturers have no rules. The choice is clear. In the 20th century, it bore that out in the sense that when the communists would bring someone to the Lubyanka, or the communists would bring someone to the Pitesh prison, there were no rules. And honestly, I could think of no worse fate that anybody in the entire universe could possibly suffer than what happened in these godless communist countries, even compared to something as awful as the Spanish Inquisition. So that when people talk about whether you need religion to have a moral society, I think about how even the most evil people in the world were made at least a little bit less evil by faith.
I mean, I hear that. I hear your point. I will tell you like this. We don't talk about the British court, the French court, or the Spanish court as being as heinous, as cruel as the auto de fe. We don't talk about it as cruel.
There's a reason for that.
There's a cruelty that the Spanish Inquisition did. That Torquemada, he was very cruel to the Jews. And I'll be honest with you, while you want to say that there's, this, that, whatever to it, even the Pope at some point was saying Torquemada, like, I'm getting reports of your cruelty that you need to calm down. So, I mean, I get your point about, talking about whether a religious society is better for morality or this, that, or whatever. And you know what? You might be right.
There's a reason we don't talk nearly as much about the cruelty of other medieval kings as compared to the Spanish Inquisition. That's pretty simple, because there's a book that came out in England after England became Protestant. It was called the Fox's Book of Martyrs. And it talked all about how Protestants were suffering terrible tortures at the hands of Catholics. For example, it talked about Bloody Mary Tudor. In fact, the reason she's called Bloody Mary is because she got very bad press in Fox's Book of Martyrs. So a lot of what we think we know about the Spanish Inquisition was shaped.
She got bad press after killing a bunch of Protestants. I'm shocked.
Yeah, no, she got right. But the thing is, Elizabeth I killed more Catholics than Bloody Mary Tudor killed Protestants, and no one's calling her Bloody Elizabeth Tudor. You see? So it's not that she got bad press because she did something bad. It's because the people who were writing the stories had an agenda. So they're going to tell you this side of the story and not tell you that side of the story.
Oh, come on. History is written by the victor.
Exactly. And in England, in England, the victor was the Protestants, because the Church of England is still the Church of England.
Okay. You ever notice when you read history, it's always the good guys that win? It's like, you look at it, hold on. You look at history, it's always the good guys who win. Because we won, so we're obviously the good guys. So when I write stories, I'm going to write the stories based on my values, my ethics, my morality,
exactly.
my history.
You're making my point for me, because in the English-speaking world, the account of which religion was correct was shaped by propaganda books like Fox's Book of Martyrs, and that's what I'm trying to say.
I understand that, but it was even before that. The reason why the whole Protestant Reformation happened is because the Catholic Church couldn't keep anything straight. Had they kept everything straight, it was such a different religion by the time Martin Luther came on from what it was even just 500 years ago, forget about 1,000, that like, he was just like, what is going on here? We have to go back to what we were. He didn't want a whole Reformation. He wanted like the Catholic Church to be like, hey, what happened to us? Let's get back to who and what we are, and it's not this craziness that we are in today. And then what happened? You had this religious war going on for the majority of the 16th century, where Catholics and Protestants are going around killing each other, just like the way Sunnis and Shiites are doing in the Middle East right now. But what happened is eventually there was some sort of cease. There was some sort of like, okay, you can be Protestant, I'll be Catholic, we'll just deal. Now they came to some sort of agreement on how to live together. But now we fast forward a few hundred years, and we forgot what it is in the West to have a religious war. Now, hold on, you have a religious war in the Middle East going on right now, and you don't understand about why the two sides are fighting the way they are. And we don't understand why all this crap is going on, but because we forgot one basic fact, that there is such a thing as good and evil. And because we have forgotten that there's such a good thing, that there's such a thing as good and evil, when we do things in life without morality, without a basis of where that line of demarcation is, where's that line of good and bad, a lot of bad shit's going to happen because we don't have the morality to choose the right thing.
Well, that morality is something that's been chipped away at very, very methodically over the last, say, 100 years or so. For example, you're talking about the Reformation and the wars of religion that happened afterwards. It was extremely complicated, but a lot of the reason why places like Holland and Germany and other such places went to the Protestants, and places like Spain and France stayed Catholic, is because places like Spain and France had special deals with the Pope where there was more royal control in those places over their own people. They had to send less or no money to the Pope, whereas people in Germany, the popes were interfering a whole lot more in secular matters, and a whole lot more German money, for example, was going over the Alps and into Italy. So those people who had a financial interest in saying, you know something, I don't want to be listening to Rome anymore, those were the ones that converted to the new faith. And the people who were getting a good deal from the old faith, they stayed loyal. So a lot of what we think is a religious war and religion causes war and that stuff, that's part of it. That is definitely part of it. But a lot of it is good old-fashioned money. But once the new faith happened, war did break out. Because you know something? The question of those wars was not just who's the right religion, and if that guy over there believes something different from me, I'm going to go over there and kill him. There was some of that. But a lot of it was who is going to rule and under what warrant. For example, in the year 800, on Christmas Day, Charlemagne was crowned king. And who crowned him king? The Pope did it. He was made legitimate by the Pope. You see, so it was a political/religious thing that gave Charlemagne his right to rule. And now that we no longer had control by the Pope, and the Pope's opinion on who's the legitimate governor, the legitimate king or whatever, now that's irrelevant. Now we got to fight it out. Because you know something? When the French Revolution happened, there was wars just as big as anything that happened in the wake of the Protestant Reformation. Why? Because now that we don't have a king, now that we're going to have, we're going to try to spread republicanism all throughout Europe, we got to decide who's going to rule, and we're going to have to fight it out. So there's a certain extent to which religion causes war, but you know something? Politics does it a whole lot more. So the propaganda, and that really is all it really is that of religion causes war, is a lot dicier the closer you look at it.
I mean, I'm going to say something that when I was in college, I took this mysteries and histories class. We went through all these different things about history. And I've had rabbis tell me this. I've had accountants tell me this. I've heard tax attorneys say this. I've heard a lot of people say this. What is it when we're really trying to find out the truth of what pushes a man? They all say the same thing. Follow the money.
That's true to a great extent.
It's follow the money. The two biggest intoxicants in the world two things that really get into a person more than any drug, more than any alcohol, is power and money. More than sex, more than gambling, more than so much stuff is power and money.
And status.
Power, status is comes from power. When you have power, you have status. If you have status, you have power. It goes hand in hand. But the more power you have, the more you're able to do. It's incredible intoxicant.
Absolutely. So when people try to narrow down what caused these great cataclysms of history, a lot of people just come with that simple explanation. I don't like religion, therefore it's religion that is causing all these terrible things. I mean, say what you want, as I said about the Spanish Inquisition. I'm just going to leave you with this one statistic about the Spanish Inquisition. Let's say you were accused of witchcraft by the Spanish Inquisition, say, I think it's from a little after 1500 until the end of the Inquisition, because that's when we have the best records. There was a historian whose name completely escapes me at the moment. He actually went and looked at all the records of the Inquisition, because they kept very meticulous records. What do you think the odds of getting the death penalty if you were accused of witchcraft by the Inquisition?
I would say 99%.
You think that's exactly the opposite of the odds. You had a 1% chance of getting the death penalty if you were accused of witchcraft by the Spanish Inquisition.
Really?
I can back that up.
I did not know that.
I can back that up. On average, most people accused of witchcraft had no idea that what they were doing was non-sanctioned church magic, and they were essentially sentenced to recant that and just come back to the church.
I did not know that.
Okay, I could back that up.
Well, considering the amount of British laws that I do know about what concerns witchcraft, there's a lot of interesting things that go with witchcraft, especially in medieval.
Right, but it wasn't just religious people who believed in persecuting witches either. In fact, there were figures of the Enlightenment who they had no idea whether witchcraft was true or false or not. Science was not something that had solved that problem as of yet, and they also believed that witches should be persecuted.
Okay.
It's true.
So let me see if I got this right. If witches are persecuted, are they going to persecute me? Oh, no, because they're going to be too busy looking for witches.
Okay.
The same people that, like Galileo, had to recant everything he ever said, and if he talked about it, he would have been killed by the Catholic Church. Obviously.
Again, another complicated situation that's been simplified by propagandists. It's just a complicated situation. I'm not saying that the people who put Galileo on trial were right, because they were not. They were wrong. But it's just a lot more complicated, the whole situation, than it's made out to be.
No, it's not. It still goes down to money and power. Because of what Galileo and
Copernicus?
Copernicus, thank you. I'm saying the name wrong. Right? Because of Copernicus and because of other people like him. From Sir Isaac Newton to Leonardo da Vinci, and all these great Renaissance and medieval thinkers that were questioning what the church really was.
No. See, the thing is, you were questioning what
wait, hold on. Let me. You know what? They're not. There wasn't their intention to question the church. That wasn't their intention. Their intention was to understand nature. Their intention was to understand the universe and to understand the world. The problem is that when you have a church that wants to keep its population illiterate,
they didn't want. That wasn't the case.
The Catholic Church, oh yeah, only the hierarchies really were able to read and write. Only the higher ups. Only whether you were noble or you were in the priestly class.
What was there to read then, besides tax rolls or something? I mean, if you're a peasant in medieval Europe, what were you going to read? I mean, you're going to curl up with a good book that costs the equivalent of $5,000 or something like that. Come on, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it was because until paper in the 1500s came to Europe, books were so tremendously expensive, and of course, until printing,
The
when all the
Gutenberg press.
okay, the Gutenberg press. So if you're saying that it was the church that kept people illiterate, you got to remember that books weren't widely available. There was nothing to read for most people unless you had all the money you needed to buy a freaking book.
While I understand that, why is it though then that the Jews still learned how to read and write? Why is it throughout all of history that God was like, hey, this is an important thing for you? But yet, when it came to the Catholics and it came to somebody being like, hey, let's get them a little education, they kept getting shot down. And don't be like, oh, that's all.
It was a different list of priorities. It was a different kind of community. It was just a completely different situation. But that's neither here nor there. But what I am trying to say is that all these accusations that are leveled against religious people throughout history are, almost every time you look at them, more complicated than they're made out to be by people who do have an agenda. And I'm religious myself, and I definitely have a bias, but I don't think it would be fair to say that I have an agenda. I just want to know what the truth is. And you will always find the truth where it said, you know something, things are a lot more complicated than they seem.
100%. That's not even a question. But to go back to my point of with the Catholic Church, even today, and now, you know what, this is just my personal experience. This is not a theory or this has just been my personal experience, what I'm about to say. Every religious conversation that I've ever been in where I felt like the person really knew the Bible inside and out, the person was usually a Protestant, not a Catholic. To this day, I have seen more Protestants who understood the Bible than Catholics. Catholics do not read the Bible the way Protestants read the Bible. And that goes back to the way the Catholic Church wants to keep their people ignorant.
It's not that they want to keep their people ignorant. It is more to do with the Catholic Church has an interpretation of the Bible that is essentially what they would call canonical. This is how the Church Fathers of the patristic era, if you want to say, this is how the Church Fathers interpreted Scripture. And if you're going to read Scripture, you have to look through this particular lens. And if you're going to read the Bible on your own, you're going to come up with non-canonical interpretations of it. And when Martin Luther finally told people, hey, you should read the Bible, it was a big freaking cataclysm. So, I mean, I'm not saying that they're right or wrong, and because I'm not a Catholic, and I don't believe in the Catholic religion, although I do have respect for it and what it's done over history. They were not wrong in what would happen if everybody's free to interpret the Bible for themselves, because what did happen in the actual event was cataclysmic, and it fractured Western Christendom in half, and its effects are still felt today. Okay, so that's all we got for you today. And remember, Just Power, the third volume of the Kingmaker series, is now available. All three are available. My podcast, my YouTube channel has the first volume of Kingmaker, Consent, for free as an audiobook. See there for more.
I want to thank you all for listening. Y'all have a good morning, good afternoon, and good night, and y'all have a great day.